Online dating is one of the most powerful yet frustrating experiences in the modern world. On the one hand, it allows you to meet people that you otherwise never would have met, but at the same time, it introduces problems and dilemmas that you never would have faced in previous generations. In many ways, it's the hardest time in human history to find a successful partner. In this video, I'm going to go through some of the main obstacles and problems with online dating, but also share some of the main solutions and strategies that help you navigate the online dating world and hopefully increase your chances massively in finding a successful partner in the future. I think most people assume that online dating is purely a luck game. But actually, luck comes into it in the sense that the specific person you meet is down to luck. But the kind of person that you meet is down to approach, mindset, and your understanding of what to look for in the first place. So one of the main reasons for this is because of the idea of missed opportunities. If you have a huge range of things to pick from, and this could be both in terms of online dating, but also even in the commercial world with products, it's often the case that you end up feeling like if you choose the wrong one, it's a missed opportunity. And if you overcommit down one particular avenue, it's very hard to kind of backtrack in the future. And this is definitely applicable with online dating because you feel that if you persist with a date that is kind of suboptimal or not the perfect partner, then you end up missing out on the possibility of meeting the perfect person. And this could be true despite the fact that the person could be the right kind of person for you. So the next kind of problem with online dating is how to know what you want or what you should look for. So I've actually made a couple of other videos in the past on the topic of dating and relationships. So that kind of fills in some of the gaps between what you should look for and statistically and psychologically, what are the traits that tend to be correlating with a successful date or relationship. So the other big common complaint is the idea of ghosting and time wasting. So there are a lot of people who you might start communicating with and having seemingly good conversation with, only to find out that several hours, days, weeks later, this person completely blanks you and you don't hear from them again. This is one of the reasons why people get disheartened by online dating, because they started to invest and build up their hopes for this particular person. They end up getting disappointed and they're left in the dark and they wonder what they did wrong, even though they might not have done anything. I think the main message to keep in mind when it comes to ghosting is when someone ghosts you, it's not a reflection of your own worth, it's a reflection of their priorities. So when someone puts all this effort in to converse with you and then all of a sudden out of nowhere they stop, you could take it as you must have done something wrong. But in reality, it could be a number of things. It could be they've met another person. It could mean that their dating priorities aren't as high as they used to be. Or maybe they've just got a lot going on in their life and dating is just something they do in between those things. So now I'm going to introduce 5 strategies that massively increase your chances of finding a partner and long-term success in the online dating world. So the first one is be selective but not picky. There's a common stereotype that every guy swipes right on every profile they come across and most girls barely swipe right on anyone, and you have this massive kind of disparity between what men do and what women do and how they approach online dating. Obviously, this is a massive exaggeration, but at the same time, there is some truth to it, and guys do tend to be more guilty of this particular strategy than women. So as a side note, I'm actually reading a book at the moment called The Ape That Understood the Universe, and this book explains through the idea of evolutionary psychology why this phenomenon exists in the first place. So it's important to know that this particular strategy of swiping right on every profile or playing the numbers game in the most raw sense is not a good strategy. It also puts you in an unfavorable situation from the algorithm's perspective, because the algorithm tends to assign a certain value, but also the type of people who it promotes and recommends to you is based on, to some extent, and this is an oversimplification, but the ratio of people who you like versus who like you back. So if you swipe right to everybody, it reduces you down the pecking order. So instead, by being a little bit more choosy and more specific and trying to pick out the types of people who you genuinely are interested in, it tends to recommend you more often than not to those type of people. So it's important to remember that most people in the world are not going to be compatible with you. And this could be because of cultural reasons or mismatching personalities, or even you're just not physically attracted to them. But it's equally bad to try and find perfection in a particular person. One, because it doesn't exist, but also it puts you into the category of people called maximizers. And these people tend to be over analytical and try to find the perfect person, and they need to tick every single box Instead, what's recommended is to try and become more of a satisficer, which is someone who's only looking for good enough. These terms, maximizer and satisficer, are found in both the books How to Not Die Alone by Logan Ury and even The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz. So the next solution to online dating is to be authentic. It really isn't in your interest to be anyone other than yourself, and this is for a number of reasons. First of all, it could be very tempting to try and appeal to everyone and try and create like a persona that you think will be interesting to that person, but this persona is often not sustainable. And if you're with this person long enough, eventually they'll see through the cracks of this persona and they will end up being disappointed. And that often leads to a failed relationship because they didn't get what they thought they were signing up for. The other benefit of being authentic is it tends to act as a filtering mechanism. So if you're constantly being yourself, the truest version of yourself, a lot of people are going to be not interested in that. But that might be something that you initially think is a bad thing, but actually ends up being a very good thing, because if you don't even have to do anything other than being yourself, and that filters out most of the people who are not going to be compatible, then it tends to leave you with the pool of people who are compatible. So this also encapsulates the idea of being honest with your intentions. So people who say that they're looking for one thing in a relationship or they have a particular interest and that's not actually true, that tends to also lead to problems down the line. And you end up again playing this game where you're trying to be someone purely to attract the other person, and this very rarely works out both for you and for them. So if you're a guy and you think most girls like people who go to the gym or people who like music or people who travel, and you try to capture all of these things in one profile, what ends up happening is not that you elevate your appeal, but you actually kind of blur out a lot of the things that are unique to you, and you just come across as just another one of those profiles that people will come across and just kind of dismiss because, yeah, bland, I've seen it before. Instead, if you elevate the types of traits that are most true to you, so for example, if you're a massive nerd or geek and you're into science or comics or movies or whatever it may be, try to capture that in your profile and play on that as much as you can. And you'll find that while you might dismiss 90% of people instantly, the 10% that will be remaining tend to be very interested in that type of person. So there's a particular phrase that I often think about when it comes to dating relationships, but it applies to most things as well in terms of your career and friendships, but it's the idea that you are the energy that you emit. So if you're giving off very playful, fun, light-hearted vibes, you're going to attract people who value that particular thing. Equally, if your dating profile is of, say, topless pictures of lifting weights and in the gym, then while that might be true to you, maybe it's not, and you're doing it because you think that it's going to be something that helps you. But ultimately, by giving off that type of vibe or that type of energy, that's going to be the type of people who you're drawing in, because they're going to be drawn to you for those reasons. So the next solution or the next idea is that persistence is key. It's very easy to get disheartened with online dating because you've either been chatting to or dating lots of people and it hasn't gone successfully. But the field of statistics and probability in maths is very, very powerful and very relevant. So ultimately, if you continue doing the right things long enough, eventually you will stumble upon success. The important distinction though is that you are not doing the wrong things over and over again. But if you continue to do the right things over again, eventually you will end up with the right kind of person. It's very tempting that when you get drawn to a particular person, you feel the need to kind of blur out everyone else and focus solely on that person. So one of the reasons why this is a bad idea is if that particular situation or date doesn't work out, it tends to hurt you and affect you a little bit more. So ultimately what you should be doing is, in the early stages of online dating, keeping your options open. So this could be in terms of chats and communication, but certainly in terms of going on 1 or 2 dates with someone. It allows you to make a more informed decision because you have something to compare it against. And this is the same reason why it's never a good idea to shop on an empty stomach. When you're on an empty stomach and you've nothing to go by, the feeling of desperation often makes you make bad decisions. But if you have options and you decide to kind of weigh them all up and go with the best option that you have available, it tends to go a lot better in most cases. So I know this goes against what a lot of kind of romantic teachings tend to say, and people who grew up with Disney movies and so on tends to form these romantic ideas that there's the one and you should only focus on that person. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that you should be dating and going into relationships with multiple people unless that's something that you are happy to do and they're happy to do. But in most cases, what I'm saying is that in the early stages, so between 1 and 3 dates, it's a good idea to not just invest in one person and find a balance in dating more than one person. I find it interesting because most people have an optimal number of baskets, to continue with that metaphor, in that some people, they can only really juggle or handle 2 people or 2 types of potential dates in the early stages, while other people can do 3, 4, or 5. I think for most people, the ideal number is somewhere between 2 and 4. But again, it is different for everyone, and only go with what you can handle, because maybe you've got things in your life that makes you very busy and you don't have time to handle more than 2 people. But at the same time, if you are going down the route of having 10 people or 12 people, it's probably a sign that you're either overly desperate or you don't have enough other things to kind of balance out your life. So once you've got more than one person who are potential dates, how do you work out which person is best for you? Well, for some people, they like to make a pros and cons list, and that might work for some people. But I think it's important at first to at least acknowledge if there are any non-negotiables. If any one of those people has something that is a no-go, and that could be for some people the wrong or different religion to them, or for others it could be that they smoke or do drugs, or maybe for someone it's that they do or don't want kids. These are things that it's important to communicate and iron out early on, so that you don't end up investing in this person only to find out that there's a clash and that you're not actually compatible in the long run. So the last item and last idea in this list is the idea of reflection and growth. Ultimately, you are the common denominator between all of your dates. So it's important to realize that if you are going on many dates and meeting lots of people, but time and time again you're getting the same results, this could be a sign that either you're doing something wrong, or that you need to make a slight adjustment, or maybe that things just haven't worked out and luck hasn't gone your way so far. But I think reducing everything down and blaming everything down on luck is usually not a good strategy. Almost always there's something that you can do better, whether that's elevate your own appeal by making your life more interesting and taking things on and improving yourself, whether that's through health and fitness or career and so on. These things usually make a difference. So there's things you can do on that side of things. But also, if you follow some of the things in this video, I think your chances of being successful will go up. So as part of this kind of reflective and growth process, it's important not to be in a state of self-loathing. I think for a lot of people, when they go on enough dates or meet enough people and things don't go the way they'd hoped, they go into a state of either pity, or they're disheartened, or they go into kind of a negative state where they think that things won't work out, or it's never going to happen, or that online dating is really bad and inefficient. But as the saying goes, a carpenter never blames his tools. I think it's helpful to remember that we're all dealt different cards, and some people will instantly have more what seems to be luck at the start because their cards are initially more appealing to other people. But these things aren't consistent, and some of the people who've had the most success, say when they're a teenager or a young adult, tend to have less success when they're older because they haven't used that opportunity to grow and develop, because they've been complacent from what they got early on. Whereas people who have that kind of growth mindset and try to improve themselves and work on the things and try to figure out what's important to them and have the right attitudes and perspectives, you'll find that these things will eventually work out. As difficult as online dating is, the good news is that in theory you should only have to try and get it right once. This is different to things like sports, where you could win something, but then the whole season starts again and you have to try and win it again. But with online dating, if you meet the right kind of person the first time, in theory you shouldn't have to look elsewhere, because they have not necessarily tick the right kinds of boxes, but they have the right kinds of personality traits and physical traits for you. So remember, if you're continually putting in a lot of effort but not getting a lot out of it, it actually is a positive sign, because it means that there is a lot that you can do to improve your current situation. Effectively, it can only get better from here as long as you maintain that positive mindset and keep doing the right kinds of things. So that brings this video to the end. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any thoughts or comments. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one.